This is the story of Luke Bennett, a man who discovered that when everything falls apart, it might just be God putting the pieces where they truly belong. Luke Bennett grew up in the Midwest, in a small Ohio town where everyone knew everyone. From the outside, his life looked perfect. He was dependable, kind, and always there when people needed him. His father ran a small construction company, and when Luke finished college, it was expected, no, assumed that he'd take it over. He didn't argue. He wanted to make his parents proud. So, year after year, he woke up early, managed the crew, balanced the books, and smiled at every client. He attended church on Sundays, helped neighbors fix their roofs, and was the first to donate when someone was in need. But when the day was done, Luke would sit on his porch, watching the sun sink behind the fields and feel a quiet ache he couldn't name. He wasn't unhappy exactly, but he wasn't alive either. One night, after everyone had gone home, he sat at his desk, buried under invoices, and whispered, "Lord, I'm doing everything right. Why do I feel so wrong?" The only answer was the ticking of the clock. When his father passed unexpectedly, the town looked to Luke to keep the company running. "You're just like your dad," people said. "He'd be proud." Luke smiled politely, but those words became chains. He worked harder, said yes to every job, every favor, every demand. He didn't want to disappoint anyone. He missed birthdays, skipped rest, and ignored the exhaustion creeping into his soul. Then, one summer, everything began to crumble. The economy dipped. Construction slowed. A storm tore through the region, damaging half-built homes and wiping out months of progress. Insurance payments were delayed. Bills piled up. Luke's once thriving business was now hanging by a thread. He prayed every night for a miracle, but each morning brought another problem. One evening, after the last worker left, Luke stood alone in the warehouse. Rain leaked through the roof, dripping into puddles on the floor. He dropped to his knees and cried, "God, I can't keep doing this. I'm tired. I've tried to be strong for everyone, but I'm breaking." The echo of his own voice was the only reply. A month later, the unthinkable happened. A faulty wire sparked a fire in one of the storage buildings. By the time firefighters arrived, the structure and nearly all of Luke's equipment was gone. He stood in the ashes, soaked from the water hoses, smelling the smoke of everything he'd worked for. His workers stood silently, waiting for direction, but Luke couldn't speak. That night, sitting alone on the hood of his truck, he stared at the dark sky and whispered, "Why, God? I asked you for help, and you gave me fire. How could you let this happen?" He stayed there until dawn, silent, broken, and lost. The next morning, Luke drove aimlessly along the coast highway, searching for clarity. Somewhere near a quiet beach town in Maine, he pulled into a diner, the kind that smelled of coffee and bacon, with old pictures of fishing boats on the walls. An older man at the counter nodded at him. "Rough day?" Luke half smiled. "Rough life lately." The man chuckled softly. "Name's Raymond. You looked like a man carrying the world on his back." Luke shrugged. "Feels that way." Raymond gestured to the seat beside him. "Sit down, son. Sometimes God lets things fall apart, so we finally stop pretending we can hold them together." Something in Raymond's tone, steady, kind, certain, made Luke sit. They talked for hours. Raymond had once been a carpenter who lost his home, his job, and nearly his faith. But through it all, he said, God never stopped working behind the scenes. Before leaving, Raymond said, "You're not being punished, Luke. You're being prepared." Those words stayed with him. With no business and no clear plan, Luke rented a small cabin near the shore. Each morning he walked along the beach, praying quietly, listening to the waves crash like whispers from heaven. At first, he felt useless, but slowly he began to notice the little things, the way sunlight broke through clouds after rain, the laughter of children chasing seagulls, the peace of doing nothing but breathing. He realized that for years he'd been alive but not living, working hard but not walking with purpose. When he wasn't walking or praying, Luke helped Raymond repair old boats. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt healing. They worked in silence most days, talking only when needed. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Raymond said, "You've been different lately." Luke smiled. "I guess I stopped fighting God." Raymond nodded. That's when life begins to change. Months later, Luke received a phone call from his hometown. His mother had fallen ill. Without hesitation, he packed his things and drove back to Ohio. When he arrived, his mother looked frail but happy to see him. "You look peaceful," she said softly. "I think I finally understand that God's plans are better than mine," he replied. While caring for her, Luke started volunteering at a local shelter, fixing broken furniture and helping people find work. His hands, once used to build houses, were now building hope. The people he helped began to open up, sharing their stories of loss and redemption. Luke realized he wasn't alone. Everyone was fighting something unseen. One man at the shelter said, "You know, you've got a gift for this. People listen when you talk." Luke smiled. Maybe that's what I was supposed to build all along. Not walls, but lives. As the years passed, Luke's life took a direction he never planned. He founded a small nonprofit that repaired homes for low-income families. It started with one project, then another, and soon volunteers from all over came to help. One day, while standing on a newly repaired porch, Luke looked around at the smiling faces, the kids laughing, the volunteers working, and felt tears in his eyes. "This," he whispered, "this is what you were leading me to all along." Raymond visited that summer, watching proudly as Luke coordinated a team of builders. "Told you, son," he said, "God doesn't waste pain. He turns ashes into testimony." Luke nodded. "I used to think losing everything meant God had abandoned me. Now I know it was the only way he could get me where I was meant to be." Years later, Luke stood at a church podium, sharing his story to a packed congregation. He spoke about loss, doubt, and faith, the moments when it felt like God was silent, and how silence doesn't mean absence. He said, "I used to live for others, for approval, for recognition, for control. But when I lost it all, I realized that living for others only fills you with emptiness. Living for God fills you with peace." He paused, scanning the faces in front of him. "So if your plans are falling apart, don't panic. Maybe they're not supposed to work. Maybe God's plan is greater than what you're holding on to." The audience sat still, some wiping tears. Luke smiled gently and said, "Don't lose hope. Even in your darkest moment, God is still writing your story. Just because you can't see the ending doesn't mean He hasn't planned it." That evening, Luke walked outside the church, looking at the stars. He thought about his old life, the business, the expectations, the endless need to please. He whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for every no that led me to your yes." As he looked up, a cool wind brushed across his face, almost like a quiet reminder that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. For the first time in a long time, he felt complete. In life, we all face storms that threaten to sink us. But sometimes, what looks like destruction is really direction. What feels like loss is preparation. Luke Bennett learned that God's plan doesn't always look like success. It looks like surrender. And through that surrender, we find strength. So if you're listening to this and you feel lost, remember, your story isn't over. God is still working in the silence. Trust Him. Keep going. Don't live for others. Live for truth. Live for Him. And when things don't make sense, whisper, "Lord, I know you have a plan," because He always does. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.